controlling my thoughts in that aspect. And then I start to smell things around me. Okay, what can I currently smell? Okay, I can smell my coffee. I can smell maybe what I ate for lunch an hour ago, with taste, obviously. And then feel, what am I feeling right now? Try not to feel your body, but objects around you. Okay, I can feel my chair. I can feel my table. What kind of surface is? So you're kind of having this dialogue within yourself because you're trying to control your thought process. Because again, to me, anxiety is your thought is somewhere else, your mind, not aligned with your body. So that actually rolls into my next point, which is talk about it.
Just talk about it.
Ignition sequence start.
And we are live with the Primas in 5,
4,
3,
2,
1.
In this episode, the Primas talk about fear as it relates to our everyday behavior. ¿Qué onda, primas y primos? Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I am Cindy B, and I am here with my two beautiful and intelligent co-hosts, Jess and Melly.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. It's Jess. Hope everyone's doing good.
Okay, so today's episode is pretty cool. I think it's very interesting because we're going to talk about fear in a way you may not have heard it before. For example, did you know that the majority of our negative thoughts come from our childhood trauma in which we learned behavior? Somewhere along the lines, we learned to fear certain things about life. We all have unique fears that we learned from our environment growing up. So everyone is different, and one fear is bigger or more or less significant than the next. We're all wired so uniquely, intentionally, is my belief. And so we're all our very own little universe, if you will. But let's get started. How are the rest of the Primas feeling about this topic? How were you feeling when you were preparing for this topic? Primas.
I was really excited. I love this topic. We can go so in depth with fear, not only within ourselves, but in our environment, and just seeing how we have different types of fears. Like for me, when we chose this topic, I started thinking about things that I was fearful of, and it made me want to go back and think, well, why am I afraid of these things? So for example, snakes. You guys know, I'm terrified of snakes, and I have no idea why. I never was encountered by them. I never saw one up close in nature, but for some reason, and we're going to deconstruct why this fear inside me is instilled since I was a kid. So I liked how it provoked me to think about my certain fears.
For me, actually, I was kind of a little bit intimidated to talk about fear in general, just because for me, I'm very fearful of a lot of things, fearful of what could happen in the future and fearful how my day is going to go if something goes wrong. So that causes a lot of anxiety and pressure on someone just like myself. So our Primas podcast is all about thinking outside of our comfort zone. So I took this into consideration, looking at some of the footnotes that my lovely cousin Cindy had posted for us, and then started getting a little bit more attached to the topic. And, I kind of let go and let loose a lot of my fears, quote unquote, that I had after the researching and doing a little bit of outside thinking of this topic.
That's nice, Mel. Thanks for sharing, because it's vulnerable, right? When you talk about fear and your own fears, and they're all so different, you're in a vulnerable spot to be able to say, yes, I do fear that. I don't know where it comes from, or to identify that a certain behavior stems from fear. But what I like about this topic is that you can work on your fear and anxiety. I really appreciated that if you just understand enough, in some cases, I don't want to say in every situation, but I think us, for example, our age group, we're still young enough where we can still rewire ourselves so that we can have better experiences in life. Whatever we are fearful of, if we know how to know where it comes from and then kind of deal with it and fix it, it's doable. So, yeah, so thanks for sharing. And I also wanted to say that Jess was visiting me in Colorado a few weeks ago, and we went hiking, and I saw a snake, and I didn't even tell her. And I didn't even know it was that bad, Jess. I never knew that you were like crazy fearful of snakes. I never knew that.
I don't want to say I don't want to say I have a phobia, but it is like, remember I told you the Python story?
No.
About the professor and like she had a pet python?
Oh, but see, that's like different.
Yeah, so just thinking about it though, you're right. Yeah. I never encountered it, but still like psychologically, I thought about it and it freaked me out. So I don't want to say I have a phobia because if I'm in a room with a snake, I'm not going to like run out all hysterical, but they make me very uncomfortable and I am fearful of them.
Interesting. I think snakes are dope. I think they're misunderstood. But I don't know.
Finish your story. You said you grabbed it with your bare hands when you
No.
And threw it at me.
So, no, I saw it, but it was a little, to be honest, every time I've ever seen a snake, and I see a lot of snakes, not a lot, but I've seen a lot lately when I go hiking, and they're always hiding and going away from the humans. They're never in a state of like attack. They're always like, they're scared, like they're just as startled or like just as freaked out, and they're like, what? And they turn around. So my experience has always been like me freaking out, but then also them fleeing. So I'm like, oh, thank God, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about fight or flight. So, so it's just crazy because, okay, we went hiking and then Jessica was right there, but then I was in the front and then Jess's daughter was in the middle, and then it was Jess and Steph and Jasmine. And so anyway, and we were walking and I see it, and it was little, but I see it, but I'm like, if Jess sees it, she's gonna like lose her shit and then we're gonna fall off this little cliff here. And the baby was with us. I didn't want the baby to have like a negative encounter in nature. So I was like, no. So I just stopped, but then I just grabbed Jess's daughter and I was just like, I just grabbed her. I don't know why, like I was gonna pull her, but then Jess grabbed her other arm. We were tugging. They were like tugging at her. And then finally it went away, and then Jess didn't even say anything. She was just looking straight at me like, oh shit, something's going down. And she was pulling her and I was pulling her, and it was just like weird because I'm like, why are we doing this? And then I let her go and I'm like, sorry, there was a snake and I didn't want to freak you out. She's like, let's get out of here. But anyway, that was funny.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that because that was such quick instincts. That was definitely what we're going to talk about, that flight instinct that legit kicked in you. And I appreciate it because I definitely would have traumatized my daughter. She would have been afraid of things like
well, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you have a cousin like me that has your back like that. But you know, whatever. Is that my ego talking? So, okay, I'm really excited because we're going to talk about psychology today. And psychology is very important to two of the Primas on the podcast. Me and Jess studied psychology in college, and we get a kick out of learning and observing and trying to understand human behavior. We have a very different approach, I think, and very different interests, but psychology is still like, I think everyone should be learning how to understand each other and ourselves, you know? So, and then Mel has a cool, like, I think we're a dynamic trio because Mel has, she's a speech pathologist, and so she works with children. And I feel like we may not be experts in the field, but what we have learned, we want to just share our observations of the world through our very unique lens, right? We're not speaking for anyone else but our very like individual selves. So, meaning that we're imperfect humans, and if we ever say something that you're like, no, that's not true, then just know that it might not be. So do your own research, stay woke. Always do your own research, no matter what anyone ever tells you. Okay. So what is fear? Let's just talk about the definition that you'd find on the internet. And I'm going to give two definitions just so that, like, I don't know, for me, if I hear the same thing, like a concept twice in a different manner, it just helps my brain be like, oh, okay, you know, like make the connection. I don't know. So anyway, so what is fear? Fear is an emotion induced by perceived danger or threat, which causes physiological changes and ultimately behavior changes, such as fleeing, fighting, or freezing from perceived traumatic events. Okay, so that's one definition. And then the other definition is, fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous or likely to cause pain or a threat. So, with that said, when I did study fear and when I continue to study, like, you know, some of our psychological human limitations, like kind of like our thoughts and like what we create. So why do humans experience fear? We experience fear as a survival mechanism, just the same way that we experience hunger. It's in our biology, it's in our makeup to experience hunger because our bodies need food for energy and for survival. And so it's the same thing when someone experiences fear, it's to avoid a threat. It's to alert yourself that, whoa, we need to fight, flight, or freeze in this situation in order to increase our survival as humans. So I think it's really cool that every time I had to go into studying human behavior and like the central nervous system and then just how our bodies are designed, it's super amazing to me how our bodies, our whole entire system is here to keep us alive and to thrive in life. It's here to just do what we say. And it's just amazing to me when I learn some stuff where I'm like, man, it's so amazing, like how we're designed to even feel something like fear, right? For us to protect ourselves. So, okay, so before I get into like why we go into fear, do you guys want to share anything that you think is like a story or a small example that you can explain what fear is? Like a reaction to fear? So the one that we were talking about was like snakes, right? Can you guys explain like any other examples that humans might go through?
When it comes to fear, the best way I can explain it is it's like this subconscious thing within our human structure. Like I think our brain recognizes fear faster than we can actually process it. So for example, if I were to see a bear as a baby or maybe as a toddler or a kid, how do they know that that's scary? How do they know naturally to run from it if they've never seen a bear before? But our body, and I think it's passed on from evolution, it's instilled within our biology to look at something, to recognize it less than a nanosecond and run. And we're gonna run and do our flight mode, which is to survive. How do we know that? How do we explain it? Because it's in our biology. And I think due to evolution processes, like you're handed down, Charles Darwin states, survival of the fittest. So these genes are little by little passed down from generation to generation, and that's how we have it. So even if we don't know why we're fearful of something, still that human nature within us goes on like a light switch. That's it. We got to get out of here. Our body's telling us, our mind is telling our body, we need to leave. Let's not process it. We don't have time to process it. We just need to run.
For me, I think fear, I agree, Jessica, what you were saying. It's evoked in us through our environment, through what we're around. You know, if, for instance, we have relatives or people that we're around that have these certain type of like fearful characteristics, then we become fearful, or kind of that like certain urgency of like, that what if type of factor. So I think it's very environmental based. Yes, we do have those like Cindy who are very fearful of snakes, which I would probably be with Jessica on that same boat and run off, off the hiking trails, because I have seen a rattlesnake in front of us, and that was super scary because we had to, like, we were literally up on Lake Avenue and Echo Mountain, and that path, Jess and Cindy, that is like one narrow path, so we just had to wait it out, or else we had to go all the way back down the mountain. But anyways,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really nuts. So I mean, just like that, like I would just say like it's an environmental factor. Like myself, like I just feel like if I feel someone else's fearfulness, or if that's a word type of feeling, like I'm gonna feel that way, and it's gonna get me. So I need to like subconsciously tell my brain, calm down, everything's gonna be okay.
I love both of your examples because yes, that is, so we actually need fear, right? It's like we said, it's a fear is a self-protective mechanism for our survival. Okay. So we need that. That's important that we have fear. However, we've gotten to the point where we've pushed it a little bit and it's become stress and anxiety. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, like, we're breaking it down so that hopefully this explains a little bit of how we're wired as humans. It's totally different for everybody, but generally speaking, this is what fear is. This is why it's important for us. So it's not something like, don't ever fear. Like, no, that's something that we have as a survival tool. And so, but we don't need to be using it. We don't need to be in a constant state of fear, which translates into a constant state of stress, because that becomes dangerous to us. And like I said, we're going to break it down. But I'm just excited that we're talking about this, because I feel like once you kind of start to understand human behavior and you start to understand yourself and why these things happen, you can embrace them, but then also learn to control them. Fear shouldn't control you. You should be able to control fear. It's important. And so why is it important? So it's important because we should, as humans, be able to know how to detect a threatening situation, right? So evolutionarily speaking, evolutionarily, is that a word? Evolutionarily?
From an evolution point.
Of heated of when no one headed. Take headed of.
From evolutionary, is that a word?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let me Google that. No, I'm playing. Okay. So from an evolution point. Okay. I don't know. Sorry, you guys. I'm having an ESL moment right now. Okay. So yeah, so like if we were in a, like mankind, right, or whatever, a man was in a cave and he's like, evolutionary is a word.
Evolutionarily speaking.
Evolutionarily speaking. So I think I was right the first time. Yay. Okay, whatever.
Yay.
So, okay, a man was in a cave and then there was like a saber-toothed tiger outside. And so his immediate biological makeup is telling him, he sees a threat, he perceives it, and then that, like, he's visually making eye contact with the threat, and then that signals very quickly, like you were mentioning, Jess, a chemical reaction in our body's entire function to be able to either fight the situation, flight, like leave, or freeze, where we kind of stay in a panic position where our body just freezes and we can't move. Which could be dangerous, but I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation. So in this case, if the man, let's say, for example, was kind of like stuck in the cave, there was no out, he was going to have to make the decision but it's not really making the decision consciously, like Jess was saying. This is a chemical reaction that happens very quickly, that it's an automatic response. It's super awesome. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, I really like to study the brain, because it's just like, everything's happening before we can even be aware of it. And it's because our system wants to help keep us alive. So he's going to have to fight it, right? And so that adrenaline rush, that cortisol kick, all of these very, very strong chemical reactions start to send a lot of oxygen and blood into our muscles so that we're able to fight. And then we get like a little splurge of crazy superhuman energy to be able to fight off that saber tooth, right? In that situation. So let's bring it back to a situation where the term is fight, flight, or freeze. If a very like angry dog is coming at you, and you're gonna have like an instant chemical reaction where you're gonna either get like a little superhuman strength and be able to run off the dog, like be able to run and jump and get away, get to safety. Or if he's too close, maybe you're gonna have to fight him off. But I think, your system is trying to do the best to keep you alive. So fighting isn't always the answer. Mostly fleeing is like, get the hell out so that you get out of the situation safely. And then freeze is when your system goes sort of into a panic mode and you kind of like for a split second, you don't know what to do. And like, I feel like that could be dangerous, but I heard that for like animals, like in the wild, playing dead. And their system goes into a shock where they're just like, they're playing dead and they're not really dead, but now you know that predator thinks, oh, this is, I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but so I think freezing in some instances does work. So, do you guys have anything to add on that? Okay, go.
I can only recall one time I've ever had that flight or flight instinct, which was when I was skydiving, which was odd. Like I've heard people.
That's not odd. I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense after, but I've like my whole life, I've never encountered it up until that moment, which was like my early 20s, because I've heard people say their experiences when they're fighting, like a physical altercation, you know, and I'm not a violent person. I've never done that. So my first experience with fight or flight was when I was up already in the air. They opened the door and my body knew, why are we jumping off a perfectly functioning plane? It didn't make sense. My body was like, what are we doing? Let's not do it. Abort, abort.
That's so cool.
And then I was telling it, nah, it's cool. I got us. We have a parachute, relax. And I did it, but I felt it. I felt the adrenaline running through my body. I felt my heart racing for no reason. I was sitting calm, but my body knew we were about to do something. As soon as he opened that door, it started putting 2 and 2 together so quickly. And it was telling me we should not jump it. Yeah, as a threat. We should not be jumping off this plane. We don't have wings for a reason, Jessica.
Oh, that's cute. I love that.
That was my first experience that I recall.
That's pretty cool. That's cool. So some of the physiological changes that happen, just so that we can explain very quickly why it's when fear, you know, starts turning into like continuous stress and anxiety, it starts to become dangerous to our physical and emotional health and mental. So some of the physiological changes that happen when your body goes into a fight or flight response mode is your digestive system slows down and then it stops, because your system is trying to take all of the attention out of everywhere else to be able to tense up so that you're very quickly able to decide, what am I going to do in this situation? And so your heart rate increases to push blood to our muscles faster. So your heart starts racing. And then you start to breathe very heavy to get oxygen into your muscles. So again, this is all like, this is about to be physical, right? It gets very, very physical. And then there's like heightened anxiety. So in this case, anxiety is very important to us, because anxiety basically is when your thoughts are racing. In this part of our system, when we perceive threat, it's very important that our thoughts are racing, because we're meant to think of like a bazillion different solutions to be able, again, to get us out alive, right? So you're just like, oh, should I do this? Should I jump there? Should I? So you, in that instance, anxiety is important, but not all day, right? Not continuously. It's a very powerful thing. So there's heightened anxiety to think of multiple options for survival in a fast way. And then your muscles tense up. And so that's why a lot of people get massages, right? Because our muscles tense up from like stress. And again, that's just an example of how your body's just getting ready to fight or flight, because that's something that's in our makeup. And so cortisol is a stress hormone. And this is a very powerful hormone, because look at what it's making all of our body systems do. It's like shut down. We need to like quick. We need to send everything to the muscles, because when you get ready to either fight or flight, either of which need extreme power, right? And so extreme energy. So our nervous system is on very high alert, right? We're just like super like, oh shit, what's going on? So our bodies are designed to increase our survival. This is why we have fear. I hope that part made sense and it wasn't too like boring and psychology-ish, but I think it's pretty cool to learn, like, oh, that's why we fear stuff. Like that's where it comes from. That's pretty cool. So sleep is so important for tissue repair. And so now that we understand kind of what fear is, stress is that fight or flight. When you go into a fight or flight state, your body becomes stressed on purpose because it's meant for your survival. But a lot of stress can cause diseases. It slows down your metabolism, and so it stores fat, because again, when you think from an evolutionary point, if there was like a large animal coming your way and all you had was like a weapon made of like, I don't know, spear. I'm having another ESM moment. Spear. Okay. You know, you're just kind of like, you know what, I'm going to have to just wait this one out. I'm going to have to wait a few days until that predator goes away, because that's my only chance of survival. And so fat starts to store in our system. So our metabolism slows down, fat starts to store, and again, it comes from that place, right? And so our bodies cannot absorb nutrients. So we're also like depleting our system when we're in a constant state of stress or anxiety. And so there's also cardiac problems, and then there's chronic fatigue. So a lot of people, you know, if you're eating well and if you're exercising, but you're still feeling super duper tired, I think that's when you start to look at your stress level. Because a lot of people think that maybe we feel tired or we don't feel good because of other things, right? We're like, we associate it with, well, I'm not eating well, or sometimes people don't even associate it to that. And it's just like your eating behavior can affect your mood. And so again, that's why I think it's so important that I wish that we taught psychology and biology like in a more fun and interactive way, and physics and chemistry and math, because we don't teach it in a way that helps us understand ourselves or the world. We just teach it and it's so boring. And so, well, I mean, I was meant for the industrial world, but we'll talk about the school system in another episode. Yeah, so I hope that gives a good insight into what stress is. So again, stress is a response to a trigger, and it's short-lived, and it's different from anxiety. Anxiety is overthinking. It's a negative bias to a normal event, right? Because we're no longer running from threat, like from lions and all of these wild animals, right? Like we're in a different place now as humans. And so now we've turned stress into something different. And anxiety causes stress, okay? So these are two different things. Anxiety causes stress and worry. Overthinking and racing thoughts is anxiety. So I hope I made the distinction. Sorry if this sounds weird, but yeah, so now let's talk about anxiety.
All right, so thanks for that great introduction on fear and then segueing into anxiety. So today's section that I'll be discussing is anxiety. So what is anxiety? According to the Oxford dictionaries online that I found, this is the definition: a feeling of worry, nervousness, unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. So it's always that feeling of like what ifs type of factor things, which I'm sure we can all agree that we all have time to time. So in that case, like it really gives that in like perspective wise. So another thing I would like to mention is what causes our anxiety. There's everyday factors that can cause it. Work, one, I can definitely raise my hand to that, and I know my primas would also agree. People, meeting new people causes anxiety. You know, encountering new faces in your classes, along of where you're living, or you know who you're working with, or just even going to the post office. You know, you're just like, oh hi, I'm here to buy a stamp type of anxiety. Okay, new places. So traveling the world would be probably an anxiety that a lot of people will have. So there, I can go on and on, but you know what? I'm just going to keep it very short for my section. But yeah, it definitely gets us out of our comfort zone. And that's what our Primas podcast is, getting out of our comfort zone. So I would say the majority of the time we all have some type of anxiety. It's normal to feel anxious. There's that feeling of, you know, you get the butterfly feeling in your stomach, you have the sweaty palms, you know, your heart rate starts racing. So those are all characteristics of that feeling of anxiousness. You know, your knees tapping, or you're tapping your leg type of feeling. So it's normal to feel that way. And it's the feeling of like maybe perhaps starting a new job, you know, or just taking on a test. You have all those anxieties. Jess, you were just in school, so I'm pretty sure like having that stress of, even because you were doing online courses, you know, that's pretty different nowadays. The feeling of fear can be with you at all times. So right now we can even think it. We can think of that fear of feeling right now. So technically we're just in that state of mind. Okay, can it affect anyone? Yes, there is childhood anxiety. It is true. Research has showed that children, teens, and adults do experience some type of anxiety. Okay, that's why we have counselors so early in preschools, you know, or we have, you know, psychologists going into the preschool schools that we, you know, see around. I mean, obviously they don't show their badge, but, you know, some kids do get those psychological services or that, you know, that psychology background that they need, you know, support. Definitely we get counselors now. Counselors are a big thing. I remember when I was growing up in elementary school, there was no counselor and I went to a private school. So I'm sure it was funded more for the public schools, but, you know, private schools, we hardly had that, but at my private school that I went to. So yeah, I'm just telling you guys right now that it could happen at any age, you know, just be mindful of that. Yes, Jess?
I read an article that kids at a young age, how they've associated when a kid says my tummy hurts. I don't think they really mean it as like they're hungry, and what most parents I think confuse it with, but they learned that correlation like within 5 to 10 years old. Kids will come up to the parent and say my stomach hurts, and they're taking that like, well, maybe that's like their way of communicating with their parents. Like maybe they're just feeling awkward and they don't know how to express it. Because it's not like the typical emotions we're showing them at that age. But I am reading like that is progressive, and they're just trying to like pinpoint in kids, because hard, you know what I mean? It's just hard for them to really communicate how they're feeling.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is cool. That's cool because my daughter is growing, and sometimes she will say that, and I never know what it, you know, and I try to ask myself 1,000 questions like what could it be, and I just start questioning everything, and then it goes away. Like it's never, you know, someone like, was it for attention or what's going on? Like it's stressful for like 2 minutes. But and I also wanted to say, Mel, you mentioned earlier how like it's so normal to feel anxious, like to have those, you know, like those racing thoughts, like you're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? You know, public speaking or like jumping out of an airplane or whatever. But I do believe that there is a way that you can get to the place where you're not anxious, you know, because when people even say that, like, I know that I've experienced anxiety, right? Like I'm a human person. There's been times where I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? But I've never had a problem with it. It was always in a situation and that I, you know, eventually try to figure out how to get out of, but it was never like a super crazy where I hear a lot of people say like, or I just can see it in them. I'm like, oh my God, you need to like relax your thoughts. You know, I feel bad. Like I feel empathetic towards you because I don't know how. I'm very sensitive, you know, like I could never not be more calm. I'm always trying to be more calm and like more routine driven so that I don't freak out. I don't know. I just need that, you know, not a lot of people do, but like for me, if I were to have more thoughts racing, like I can only barely handle my own life. So like if I were to think how some people that have mentioned, like, oh, I feel anxious towards this, or I just feel like not bad for them because it's not really bad. Like everybody's going through their own thing, you know, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's just like, I know what's happening to their system when they're in this constant state of anxiety and stress. And I feel like, damn, that sucks, you know, like I wish I could help. And sometimes as much as you want to tell someone, like, this is what you can do, it's on them, because a lot of people will be like, no, but you don't understand. And it's just like, yeah, I'm sure I don't. I'm just saying, like, try to learn a lot about it, but we'll get to that part. But I just wanted to say, like, I know it's normal, but I think people can reach a place where when stuff does go down, you remain stoic, you know, like you're just like, hey man, shit happens. Like we have to, because if not, stress is killing us, right? Like fear is killing us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. There is some point in life where, yeah, we should, you know, get that like determination to be like, no, I can overcome this, you know. But how about all those like kids that are now adults that didn't get any counseling services or didn't get, you know, seen by a psychologist or anything like that. So they're going throughout their lives to adulthood, you know, resenting people's, you know, do this, you know, meditate, take your deep breathing, you know, eat healthy. And they're just junkies, you know what I mean? And that's very unhealthy, you know. And, you know, sadly to say, we are living with people out in society who are feeling alone, you know, and deal with anxiety, because it is a disorder. You know, I'll go into some types of different anxiety disorders in a moment. But yeah, it's just very bizarre how, you know, like you say, Cindy, like how you don't know, and that factor, because we don't know, we just think, oh, you know, they're going to be okay, you know, and stuff like that. But, you know, like just to study. I don't even know, like, this would take like research or maybe another topic, but what is in their mind of a person that, can't get out of it, So this definitely opens like up opportunities for other doors for us, or just, our audience, you're welcome to leave us some messages or, give us some feedback. We would greatly appreciate that as well. So now
Mel, I just want to say thank you for saying that, because you're right. Like, I feel like I only understand it from my point. Of course, that's like the whole point of this stuff, right? Is like, I'm speaking from my perspective, and you're right, because I wasn't looking at like that you deal with children, and I do work with children, but they're older youth. So to me, it's kind of like, it's a little bit different because they're older, but developmentally, what you just said, like, that's true. And I wasn't seeing that part. I wasn't seeing you're like, yeah, but there's kids that still grow up with this issue, and you can't just tell them, take a deep breath or whatever. Like, there's layers and there's more complications. So thank you for educating me on that. I appreciate it.
Jess?
And I cannot wait to go into childhood trauma. We talk about it so much. That's going to be like an 8-part episode for sure.
Yeah. That's good.
Definitely. So going into the types of anxiety disorders, as I had mentioned that I would discuss, just to name a few, there's panic disorder, phobia, Jess, phobia. OCD is a type of anxiety disorder, and also PTSD. Okay, so as I have mentioned, some of the feelings that someone might feel, that butterfly, that rapid heart race, they disconnect and they don't go with their mind and body type of thing. So as you touched on, Cindy, in your section, natural remedies that you can do without seeking medication, or, just getting that talk from someone if you do have that communication partner, or just anyone you encounter for that, emotional, physical support. Sleep has a lot to do with it. So getting enough hours of sleep. I know they say 8 hours, but who could do that right now? I could barely juggle 5 to 6. And I know you guys are also doing the same thing. Sometimes it takes me a while to fall asleep right now. So, the heat's a factor, and just, I'm not uncomfortable right now. So yeah, it's just different things that are going on with my mind. Meditating is another thing, taking some time, whether it's starting off with like 30 seconds, 1 minute, increasing that. It's been really helpful. And also your healthy diet. Yes, I do agree. What you eat is what your body feels.
Oh, nice. That's insightful. I like that.
Any advice, Cindy, you or Jess, would you guys have to recommend as far as anything that I might have left out on natural remedies to help ease some anxiety, or anything we want to segue into that's helped you all?
I was just going to go into my holistic approaches as well, Mel. So I'm glad you kind of ended with that. Because yes, indeed.
Sorry, reading my notes, but I just wanted to say that we haven't really said real life examples of anxiety and fear or stress. For example, if some of them are like financial, right? Like if we think, oh man, how am I going to do it? My finances, and you stress about your finances, your body goes into that stress mode where all of these chemical reactions start to happen. And so imagine if you're driving and you're like, be negative, and we all kind of get that. We all got like a little road rage, and then sometimes we're late, and so like, and we're driving and we think everyone, we all think we own the road and everyone else is wrong and we're not, and all of that is stress. You're still in a tense fight or flight mode. And so like, pay attention to your body. Like, I just wanted to say that, like, because we'll get anxious over so much, right? Over the future, over the past, and all we can control is the present. And that's the only thing really that exists, and so I want to just to make that connection, because I think I forgot to mention it on my part, but I just wanted to say that sometimes, we know people that are like on a constant state of anxiety or stress, and then so their body is experiencing that very intense chemical reaction on a regular basis. And sooner or later, it starts to deplete your system, and it starts with your liver, your kidneys, your heart. And so stress does kill. And I think stress weakens our immune system so much that we end up dying over other things. But I promise you that I think it's all related to stress and diet. So our environment, because we all have stress, right? We all have anxiety. We're all trying to calm down from that. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. But yes, let's talk about the holistic approach to this issue.
Yeah, guys. So I'm glad we're mentioning this. As we always mentioned, we're not medical doctors. None of us have our doctorate. This is all from our perspective and our beliefs and remedies that have helped us. So we want to continue to share these ideas with you guys. So things that have really helped me with my anxiety and stress is, as we've mentioned, pay attention to our bodies. It's very unique to each individual. So our body is giving us signs already. So it's very important for us to be conscious and be able to read what is making us feel this way. And so for me, when I start to feel it, I feel my heart racing. For no reason, I'm just sitting at work, and I begin to feel my heart racing, and I'm like, whoa, is it too much caffeine? What is making me feel like this? So I start asking myself all these questions. Also, what's a good idea is to also be mindful of your environment. Where are you when you're having these symptoms? Because it could be a pattern. So you need to be able to read it. Well, am I talking to this person, or is this person a trigger for me? Or is it work? Or am I sitting at home in a car? You know what I mean? So if it's your environment, you got to switch up your environment, which is really hard for some people to do. But it goes back to paying attention to your mind, body, and soul, and your environment is one approach. The second approach I found was relax on purpose. Find a safe space. Step away from wherever you're at that moment. Go out for some fresh air. So if it's at your office, you can take a 10-minute break and go outside and feel that fresh air. Take a deep breath and try to relax and control your thoughts again. Because as we've mentioned through this episode, it's today in our modern evolution, it's come to our mind. There's no physical threat, but there is something triggering in our minds to make us feel this way, which, as Cindy has said, a chemical reaction. So once you start feeling those triggers, learn how to step away from the situation and go for a walk, because exercise or fresh air, believe it or not, has proven to help regulate those chemical imbalances that we're experiencing. Do you guys have any questions on 1 or 2?
To go off based off that, I didn't even think of caffeine that gives you anxiety. That's right. That the rapidness, you're totally right on that. So thanks for mentioning that. But also I have to agree with you, like going for a walk, a run, a hike, to kind of get away from your settle, like especially us being in quarantine right now. A few of us are working at home. So, well, technically all of us, but you know what I mean? Yeah, you need to break out and go out for that fresh air. So I like the way that you mentioned that part.
Yeah, getting your heart rate going does regulate your chemical imbalance.
And I wanted to share that, and we've said this before, but like deep breathing literally is you're pushing your system to sort of do the opposite and to slow down. So going out for a walk, that's literally what's going on, right? You're just like, and then take deep breaths, because your system is like rapid. It's like crazy. It's trying to protect you from a perceived threat, right? And so you need to slow it down. So you need to take deep breaths. And sometimes there's a lot of different breathing mechanisms. Some people say like, take 1 deep breath, hold it for 7 seconds, and then let it go. Some people say count to 4. So like, for me, it's always worked with my daughter. Like when she was younger, she would have like temper tantrums. Or not temper tantrums, but like the before those, like when we can start to regulate it a little bit because she was tired or overtired or whatever. And so I would always tell her to take deep breaths so that she can slow her heart rate. And so, and I needed the deep breaths too, you know, because when kids freak out, parents freak out. We're just like, oh my God. And it never happens in a pleasant environment or moment. It's always like like in the grocery store. And so everyone's looking, you know, so it's just like crazy. Like my heart's racing too. And so I'm like, we need to stop right now. I don't care who's watching, and we need to take deep breaths. And so I'm happy that my daughter had those intense outbreaks, because it forced me to stop wherever I was, because it's important. You know, you can make you're also not thinking logically when all of these things are happening to your body. So you need to slow down so that you don't have a weird reaction in public. So you don't like, I'm not saying I beat my kid, but like, I can see how that I can see how that happens when I have seen it happen, right? Or in the past, or like, you know, like when you used to get hit or whatever. So childhood trauma. No, but like, come on, we all got smacked around, right? But like, yeah, so I just wanted to explain that, like, that's what the deep breathing, like, it's so good. And when I was going through some anxiety, I want to say like 2 years ago, it was really bad. I mean, I couldn't control my own thoughts, and it got ugly because I got to a place where I could, and then I dropped. Like something happened where like, and that's life, right? And now I'm more prepared for the next crazy event for me to be like, no, it's fine. Like I recognize this, I understand it, and so I need to de-escalate, because it's natural to go into that state. But then you need to tell your system like, whoa, I'm the boss here. Like, we need to relax. And how can you relax? One of the first things that I've always heard everyone say is taking deep breaths. And like, how beautiful and natural, how much more holistic than go outside and take a few deep breaths. And I promise you'll feel better. No matter what, you're gonna feel better than that tense, ugly, racing, stressful, like crazy chemical reaction that happens. So yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree. And even if you can't go outside and go for a walk or go for a run, there are things where you can do at your desk and sit down. Anxiety, to me, my belief is your mind is not aligned with your body. You're thinking about things, the past or the future, that has not even happened. So you're instilling that threats for no reason. That's essentially what your body is going through. And like Cindy said, your body starts releasing it because it's thinking, okay, well, we're about to do something, when you're not. In reality, you're just sitting down at your desk thinking about something, whatever happened, that you're not dealing with. So my best advice is, if you're just sitting down, try to bring your senses back. So focus on your 5 senses. So the 3 that really help me is looking at something, pointing out objects in front of me. Like, I see my backpack, I see my bottle of water, I see my cup of coffee in front of me, controlling my thoughts in that aspect. And then I start to smell things around me. Okay, what can I currently smell? Okay, I can smell my coffee. I can smell maybe what I ate for lunch an hour ago, with taste, obviously. And then feel, what am I feeling right now? Try not to feel your body, but objects around you. Okay, I can feel my chair. I can feel my table. What kind of surfaces? So you're kind of having this dialogue within yourself, because you're trying to control your thought process. Because again, to me, anxiety is your thought is somewhere else, your mind, not aligned with your body. So that actually rolls into my next point, which is talk about it. My therapist actually gave me that advice. And I just started talking to a therapist about a couple of months ago. So talking about it with someone is the most crucial part, I think. They help you and guide you in reading your body and learning these symptoms. Even if you don't have a therapist, I was reading, you can find confidence in a friend or family. So if you feel like you need to talk to someone, like Cindy, even though you're in Colorado, you can call us and be like, hey, Jess, this is how I was feeling. And I always say this, if you don't talk about your thoughts or your emotions, it's like you're swallowing your own poison. You're doing more damage by keeping it within yourself and trying to fix it. But to me, helping with your anxiety and stress is talking about it. Identifying steps 1 and 2 with yourself and someone else, so they can provide you some feedback. And that's pretty much it. How do you guys feel about that?
Good. I also wanted to say that, like, the other thing that helped me, that kind of goes with deep breathing, was meditation. So meditation is also a good natural remedy, but I did want to, keep in mind those people that are more on a different level and have lived with anxiety for a really long time. It's not that easy to just change that behavior, because it's an autonomic response. Did I say that right?
Heated of, when no one headed. Take headed of. No one.
I can't talk today. So automatic response from our autonomic nervous system. Okay, sorry, tongue twisters. But so, they're in this constant state, and then once you get going, sometimes it's hard to come off of that. So I wouldn't say I'm experienced with that level of anxiety, so I want to be sensitive to that, because I'm talking more of the regular anxiety that we face. I'm not talking about people who have like anxiety attacks or just, crazy triggers that they're probably like working with someone or not, they're unfortunately not working with someone. But as just mentioned, if you do have access to therapy, do therapy. And I want to do an episode where we just talk about therapy and like how it's important, and that ties into the childhood trauma stuff. But it is important to talk about, and it's also important to get into yourself about it too, because you need to talk to yourself about it too. And you can do that through meditation, right? Where you're just kind of like controlling your thoughts, and then answers start to flow in. I promise. Like, I'm not even meditating anymore, but it really helped me through that time in my life where I didn't know what, I was going crazy. And I was like, I need to be here for my daughter. Like, I need to function. And so meditation really helped also. It was beautiful. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, Cindy, and I was actually talking to your brother who's like borderline a therapist. He graduated with his master's in social work, and he gave me some advice the other day, and he said, he was so proud that I'm in therapy and undoing 30 years of what I was taught. Like, it's not going to happen overnight, guys. That's 100%. But as long as you're moving forward and trying to help yourself, then that's progress. There's no shame in that game at all.
Yeah. And I wanted to add that, like, it's important that we talk about these things because we all face these things, and it's like, we can fix it. There's a solution. Of course, solutions look very different for everybody, but I kind of like to know that if you just learn more about anxiety, like if you do suffer from anxiety or if someone does, the best thing you can possibly do is educate yourself on that topic to see how you can best help. Because a lot of the time, things are not in your control. There's nothing you can do for other people. And sometimes some people are ready and say, yes, I do have this issue. I want help. Some people are not ready, So like, it's just important to be empathetic to it. To be like, whatever it is, I just understand. And like, to me, that's why I loved studying psychology, is because I can understand more. Like when someone does go into something that a lot of people are like, oh no, why are they acting like that? And to me, I'm like, well, I can see how that happened, right? Like we can always explain the behavior. So with anxiety, I just think it's cool because there's a lot of different ways to approach feeling better and not have racing thoughts, to have better control of our thoughts. So yeah, thank you. I love this topic. I hope you guys loved it back. Please, we welcome you to leave us feedback of any kind on our Instagram, on our YouTube. We appreciate every single person that listens. We love you so much. Thank you for being on this journey with us. And we hope that this episode helped.
All right, everyone. So this concludes today's episode on fear / anxiety for today. Thank you so much for listening to myself and my primas today on our topic, as we all gave our feedback on a lot of the fears and examples we have in real life. Please follow us, like my cousin Cindy said, on our Instagram page, as well as our YouTube channel, PrimasPodcast. We would love to hear from you all. Some of the messages, private DMs that we've been receiving have been amazing. The comments as well have been really fulfilling. So we're trying to get back to you guys as soon as we can, but thank you so much for your patience and your generosity. Also giving some love to our man on the back who's not here with us today, Eloy. Thank you so much for all your help as well. Please join us next time on our next podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.